When we desperately try to hold on to someone at all costs, when we sacrifice our dignity and humiliate ourselves in the name of love, we are actually sending a powerful and damaging message to our subconscious mind. I am not enough on my own. I need someone else to validate my worth. This internal message slowly erodes our sense of self-respect, and without realizing it, we lose the very essence that makes us attractive to others. We cease to be a source of admiration and become someone who is easy to discard, easy to overlook. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, taught us that true love, the kind that nurtures and sustains, is born when we have fully integrated all aspects of ourselves. It emerges when we no longer seek someone to complete us, but instead choose to share our journey from a place of wholeness and fulfillment. However, most people confuse love with attachment. They mistake emotional neediness for affection, believing that another person can fill the voids they feel inside. But this belief is nothing more than an illusion, a psychological trap set by the unconscious mind. It is a reflection of our deepest wounds, our unresolved traumas, and the emotional scars we have carried since childhood. When someone degrades themselves for love, when they emotionally crawl at the feet of another in the desperate hope of being accepted, what they are really doing is exposing their most hidden wound. They are reliving the fear of abandonment, the excruciating feeling of not being enough, the belief that they have no value without the presence and approval of another person. But Jung offers a radical perspective on relationships. Everything we experience in love is a mirror of what lies within us. If someone ignores you, rejects you, or fails to appreciate you, it is often because there is a part of you that has not yet learned to acknowledge and honor itself. The problem is that society has conditioned us to believe that love should be a struggle, a battle, an unending sacrifice. We have been told that we must fight relentlessly to keep the person we love, that we must prove our affection without limits or conditions. But this concept is not only flawed, it is dangerous. Love is not about submission. It is not about diminishing ourselves or settling for less than we deserve. Love, in its truest form, is expansion. It is growth. It is the evolution of two individuals who walk together without losing themselves in the process. Jung spoke of individuation as the path to the totality of the self. This journey towards self-completion cannot be achieved if we live through the gaze of another, if we seek in external love the validation we deny ourselves. When we depend on someone else's love to feel valuable, we become prisoners of that relationship. We live in constant fear of losing it, and in that fear, we begin to compromise, to settle, to betray our own needs and desires. This is where humiliation takes root. We cling to those who reject us. We emotionally beg for affection, accepting breadcrumbs of love with the desperate hope that one day things will change. But here is the truth. Real love is never begged for. Authentic love does not arise from desperation or lack. It flourishes from inner balance and self-assurance. When you love from a place of insecurity and fear, you inevitably create toxic relationships. Relationships built on dependency, manipulation, and suffering. On the other hand, when you love yourself enough to never lower your worth, when you possess the inner strength to let go of what no longer serves you, something extraordinary happens. You begin to attract a different kind of relationship, one where you are valued, respected, and cherished for who you truly are. You radiate a self-sufficiency, a confidence, a light that does not seek approval from anyone else, but shines on its own, unapologetically and powerfully. Carl Jung taught us that everything in our lives responds to the energy we project from our unconscious mind. Our thoughts, beliefs, and emotional patterns shape the reality we experience, whether we realize it or not. If you treat yourself with dignity, if you value and respect yourself, you will attract unbreakable connections, relationships that are not based on need or fear, but on genuine connection, on mutual understanding, and a shared journey of growth. Healthy love does not enslave. It does not hurt. It does not demand that you betray your essence just to keep someone by your side. True love arises when two whole individuals choose to walk together, not out of necessity, not because they fear loneliness, but because they consciously choose each other. And that choice can only happen when both have done the necessary inner work to truly know themselves, to heal their wounds, and to stop projecting their unresolved fears and insecurities onto their partner. If you have ever felt that you must humble yourself to be loved, if you have fallen into the trap of begging for attention, if you have believed that love must be earned through effort and sacrifice, pause for a moment. Reflect. Ask yourself, is this person truly meant for you? Is it truly worth losing yourself just to keep someone else in your life? Because the truth is, when you stop humiliating yourself for love, when you learn to let go with dignity, when you value yourself enough to refuse anything less than what you deserve, something powerful happens. Real love arrives, a love without chains, without fear, without dependency. A love that does not destroy you, but instead helps you grow. A love that is free and at the same time unbreakable. When you decide not to lower yourself for love, when you stand firm in your dignity and self-respect, you become magnetic. Not because you are trying to impress anyone, but because you are in harmony with your true self. People who do not emotionally crawl for attention share something in common. They radiate security, confidence, and authenticity. They do not seek validation because they already know who they are. And that deep self-knowledge is what makes them truly irresistible. Carl Jung showed us that what we attract into our lives is never a matter of chance. Every experience, every relationship, every connection we form is a reflection of our psyche. If you constantly find yourself in relationships where you must beg for love, where you feel ignored, undervalued, or treated with indifference, it is not merely bad luck. It is a sign that something within you needs to be addressed. Perhaps it is a wound of abandonment, a fear of not being enough, or an unconscious belief that love must always come with suffering. Whatever it is, it will continue to manifest in your relationships over and over again, until you decide to face it. Many people believe that if they try harder, if they give more, if they are more patient, more understanding, eventually they will be valued. But love does not work that way. Love is not a negotiation. It is not a transaction where the one who gives the most automatically receives more in return. In reality, the more you struggle to be seen, the more you sacrifice yourself in an attempt to receive love, the less valuable you become in the eyes of the other person. Because attraction does not stem from need, it stems from respect. And no one truly respects someone who forgets themselves just to keep another person around. Jung spoke of the shadow archetype as a part of us that we prefer to ignore. In love, this shadow manifests when we allow our fears to dictate our choices, when we accept less than we deserve, when we justify someone's indifference, when we convince ourselves that we must change who we are just to be loved. All of this is a projection of something we refuse to acknowledge within ourselves, a lack of self-love. But instead of facing that reality, many seek to compensate for it through external validation. They believe that if they can just get someone else to love them, then they will finally be worthy. But this is a fatal mistake. Healthy love never arises from desperation. You cannot build a solid relationship if the foundation is the fear of abandonment. You cannot attract a strong, fulfilling connection if you are willing to endure anything just to avoid being alone. True connection happens when two people choose each other freely, not because they need to fill a void, not because they are afraid of being alone, but because their energy aligns naturally. But for that to happen, you must first do the inner work. You must learn to let go, to release those who are unwilling to value you, to close doors that lead nowhere. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is winning space for something better. It is opening yourself to the possibility that there is someone out there who will truly see your worth. Someone who is ready to embrace what you have to offer. But as long as you hold on to what does not nourish you, you will continue to block the arrival of what you truly need. Carl Jung taught us that life is always giving us signs, but more often than not, we fail to listen. We cling to relationships that drain us, believing that if we let go, we will be left with nothing. But the truth is, emptiness only exists when we have not learned to be at peace with ourselves. When you let go of someone who does not value you, when you refuse to beg for love, when you decide that you would rather be alone than in bad company, something extraordinary happens. Your energy shifts. Your perception of yourself strengthens. And the most surprising thing, many times, the very person who once ignored you begins to see you differently, not because you did anything special, but because the energy of desperation and scarcity disappears. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. But this is not a strategy to win someone back. This is not a game of manipulation. It is a real transformation within you, a profound shift that allows you to live from a place of wholeness rather than lack. Because when you truly love yourself, when you respect and value who you are, you do not need to convince anyone to choose you. The people who are not aligned with your energy naturally drift away, while the right people begin to appear. Self-love is not just a trendy concept. It is not about standing in front of a mirror and repeating affirmations or posting inspirational quotes on social media. It is an act of deep self-respect. It is about having standards. It is about knowing when to say no. It is about refusing to settle for the bare minimum. It is about understanding that you do not need to humiliate yourself to be loved. Because real love, the kind that truly matters, will never put you in a position where you have to beg for it. The problem is that many people have been conditioned to believe that love must be painful. They have grown up with the idea that love means enduring suffering, fighting endless battles, and making extreme sacrifices for the relationship to work. They have been taught that love is about tolerance, that showing affection means putting up with indifference, disappointment, and even mistreatment, with the hope that one day the other person will finally see their worth. But that is not love. That is a distortion rooted in fear. Carl Jung explained that when someone accepts less than they deserve, when they settle for emotional crumbs, what they are really doing is reflecting their own lack of self-worth. And this reflection does not just affect their romantic relationships, it influences every area of their life. Because the way you allow others to treat you is a direct reflection of how you treat yourself. If you accept less than what you are worth in love, you are likely doing the same in your career, in your friendships, and in every aspect of your life. When a person humiliates themselves for love, they do so because they believe that without that relationship, they will never find happiness. They hold on as tightly as they can to something that no longer works, convinced that if they just try harder, everything will change. But the truth is, relationships that need to be forced are simply not meant for you. You cannot force someone to love you. You cannot make someone see your value if they are not willing to. Carl Jung taught us that the human psyche seeks wholeness. It craves the integration of all its parts, striving for completeness and self-unity. However, one of the greatest dangers of emotional dependency is that it fragments the self. When you rely on someone else to validate your worth, when you need external approval to feel complete, you are unconsciously surrendering your personal power. You are handing over the key to your emotional well-being to someone outside of yourself, and this inevitably leads to suffering. But here's the crucial point. The moment you stop humiliating yourself, the moment you begin to recognize your own value and set clear boundaries, something incredible happens. You don't just reclaim your dignity, you also start attracting a completely different kind of love. A love that doesn't require begging. A love where you don't have to prove your worth. Because the right person, the one who truly belongs in your life, will recognize your value without you having to convince them. This is the power of authenticity. When you live in alignment with who you truly are, when you stop acting from a place of lack and begin to act from a place of wholeness, everything shifts. Your relationships transform. You no longer feel the need to persuade anyone that you are worthy of love. You simply are. And that internal change is reflected in the way others perceive you. If you have ever felt the need to prove to someone that you deserve their love, if you have ever believed that you must change yourself or work excessively hard just to be accepted, then stop for a moment and ask yourself, what part of me is still wounded? What am I projecting onto this person? Because Jung reminded us that the external world is merely a reflection of our internal state. The relationships you attract are a direct mirror of the relationship you have with yourself. If, at this moment, you find yourself trapped in a relationship where you are not valued, if you feel like you have had to betray your own essence out of fear of losing someone, then it is time to turn inward. Because the problem is not the other person. The problem lies in what you are allowing. And as long as you continue to accept less than what you truly deserve, you will keep attracting the same kind of relationships over and over again. Love should not be a constant battle. You should not feel like you have to prove your worth or work tirelessly just to be seen. Authentic love, the kind that is real and lasting, flows naturally. It is free of manipulation, free of mind games, free of strategies. It comes into your life when you are no longer desperately searching for it. When you have learned to be at peace with yourself. So if you ever feel the need to humiliate yourself for someone to love you, stop. Ask yourself, why am I willing to do this? What fear is driving this behavior? And most importantly, how would my life change if I truly started valuing myself? If I made myself a priority? If I stopped begging for what should be given to me freely? Because when you change the way you see yourself, you change the way the world sees you. And when you stop humiliating yourself for love, that's when real love finds you. A love that doesn't make you feel unworthy. A love that doesn't make you doubt yourself. A love that doesn't require you to become someone you're not. A love that, instead of breaking you, lifts you up. A love that is unbreakable. The moment you decide that you will no longer beg for love, the moment you realize that your worth is not dependent on someone else's validation, something inside you shifts permanently. You stop settling for relationships where you are just an option. You stop competing for attention. You stop feeling like you have to do more and more just to make someone stay. Instead, you learn to let go, not with bitterness, not with pain, but with the certainty that if something does not flow naturally, it was never meant for you in the first place. Carl Jung taught us that everything we experience in our relationships is merely a projection of our inner world. The dynamics we face in our interactions with others, whether positive or negative, are reflections of the beliefs, wounds, and narratives deeply ingrained within our subconscious. If you repeatedly find yourself in relationships where you are not valued, where you constantly give more than you receive, where love feels like an uphill battle rather than something natural and fulfilling, this is not a coincidence. It is a mirror of what you subconsciously believe you deserve. On a conscious level, you might insist that you want to be loved deeply and genuinely. You might long for a healthy, stable, and enriching relationship. Yet, if within your inner world wounds remain unhealed, if old fears still whisper doubts into your mind, you will continue attracting the same painful patterns over and over again. The key to breaking this cycle is integration. Jung emphasized the critical importance of integrating the shadow, the part of ourselves that we prefer to ignore, suppress, or deny. The shadow holds our deepest fears, insecurities, and beliefs that were shaped in early childhood, past experiences, or cultural conditioning. Perhaps, hidden within your shadow, there is a belief that you are not enough, that love must be earned through effort and sacrifice, that if someone leaves you, it must be because you did something wrong. And as long as that belief remains active in your subconscious, you will continue to attract relationships that reaffirm it. But here is the truth. You do not need to prove your worth to anyone. You do not need to convince someone to love you, because real love does not function that way. Authentic love is not a negotiation, a power struggle, or a desperate attempt to gain validation from another person. When you meet the right person, love flows naturally. There are no games, no uncertainty, no need to alter yourself to fit someone else's expectations. And here is the irony. This kind of love only manifests when you have first learned to be at peace with yourself. One of the most common mistakes people make is believing that the love of another person will fill the emptiness they feel inside. But external love can never compensate for a lack of self-love. This is why so many people, even when in relationships, continue to feel lonely. They continue to feel that something is missing. And it is not because their partner does not love them, but because they have yet to learn how to love themselves. The only way to attract an unbreakable bond is to become someone who does not need a relationship to feel complete. This does not mean resigning yourself to being alone forever. Rather, it means learning to enjoy your own company, to find fulfillment in your own life, without depending on someone else to provide it for you. Because when you reach that point, when you truly understand your worth, the right people begin to appear, not because you are actively searching for them, but because your energy has shifted. Jung stated that what we repress in our unconscious mind manifests in our external experiences. If a part of you believes that love is suffering, you will attract relationships where love hurts. If a part of you believes you must be perfect to be loved, you will attract people who always make you feel like you are not enough. But if you transform those beliefs, if you begin to see yourself as someone who deserves love effortlessly, without struggle, your reality will change. Love should not be a burden. It should not feel like a constant battle, a weight you have to carry. True love is light, fluid, and expansive. It is not a correction of what you believe is missing in you. Rather, it is an extension of who you already are. But to experience this kind of love, you must first allow yourself to release everything that does not align with it. Do not be afraid to walk away from what does not serve you. Do not be afraid to let go of those who do not recognize your value. Because the space you create by letting go of what is not meant for you will be filled with something far greater. When you stop humiliating yourself for love, when you stop begging for scraps of affection, when you decide that your dignity is more important than any relationship, the universe responds, and what comes next is always infinitely better than what you left behind. When you establish boundaries, when you refuse to accept less than what you truly deserve, you discover something powerful. The love that truly transforms is not the love that comes from others, but the love that is born within you. For far too long, society has led you to believe that finding the right person is the most important goal in life, that romantic love is the ultimate fulfillment, that without someone by your side, you cannot be whole. But this is a dangerous illusion. True wholeness does not come from being with someone else. It comes from within. And when you finally understand this, when you step into your own power and recognize your intrinsic worth, love ceases to be something you chase. Instead, it becomes something that naturally gravitates toward you. Because you are no longer seeking validation, you are radiating it. And that is the moment when love, in its purest form, finds you effortlessly. Carl Jung taught us that true wholeness does not come from being in a relationship, but from the integration of one's own self. The real challenge, however, is that many people seek love from a place of lack. They are driven by the fear of being alone, by the desperate need for someone else to make them feel valuable, by an internal void that they believe can only be filled through another person. And when love is sought from such a place, the inevitable result is imbalanced relationships. These are relationships where one person gives far more than they receive, where they constantly feel like they must fight to be seen, where they have to exert a continuous effort just to keep the other person interested. This is not love. It is emotional dependence, and emotional dependence never leads to deep, stable bonds. Instead, it creates fragile illusions that shatter at the first sign of conflict. What truly forms an unbreakable connection is freedom. Not the kind of freedom that disregards the other person's presence or feelings, but the freedom to be fully yourself without the paralyzing fear of losing someone. Jung spoke of the process of individuation as the path toward true self-realization. In love, this means that two individuals must first be whole within themselves before they can truly build something meaningful together. If you feel that your life loses its meaning without another person, then what you are experiencing is not love. It is an escape from yourself. This fear of losing someone is one of the most intense emotions a person can experience. It is so powerful that many prefer to stay in unfulfilling relationships rather than face their own solitude. But here lies the real secret. Solitude is not your enemy. Solitude is the space where you truly discover yourself, where you learn who you are without the influence of others, where you heal the wounds that make you rely on external validation to feel worthy. And when you have gone through that journey, when you have learned to enjoy your own company and to embrace your own completeness, the love that comes afterward is entirely different. You stop feeling anxious about whether someone will leave because you understand that the right person will stay without you needing to convince them. You no longer feel the urge to impress others because you are no longer seeking external validation. You stop accepting the bare minimum in relationships because you realize that you would rather be alone than be in a relationship where you are not truly respected. And that is where the magic happens. When you no longer need love as a means of filling a void, you begin to attract a completely different kind of person, someone who is secure, self-aware, and fully comfortable in their own worth. These individuals have an entirely different energy about them. They do not try to please everyone. They do not desperately seek attention. They do not use relationships as a temporary escape from their inner emptiness. Instead, they exist in a state of wholeness. And from that wholeness, they create deep, authentic connections. Carl Jung once said that true love arises when two souls are aligned in their process of growth, not when they seek to complete each other, but when they strive to expand together. Love, in its purest form, is not about filling voids or seeking validation. It is about two individuals who have cultivated their own sense of wholeness and choose to share that completeness with each other. If, in the past, you have ever felt the need to humiliate yourself for love, if you have found yourself working excessively hard just to be chosen by someone, then it is time to ask yourself why. What fear is hiding behind that desperate need to hold on to someone who does not truly value you? Why do you believe that love must be earned through sacrifice? The truth is, love, real, profound, and meaningful love, does not require you to prove your worth. You do not have to beg for love. You do not have to perform or conform to someone else's expectations just to be accepted. The only thing you need to do is be yourself. But the best version of yourself, not the version that bends and molds to fit into another person's idea of who you should be. When you stop begging for love, when you realize that you do not have to convince anyone of your worth, everything shifts. Your energy changes. Your perception of relationships changes. Suddenly, the people who once ignored you start to see you differently, not because you have transformed for them, but because you have transformed for yourself. And when that shift happens, the connections you attract become entirely different. You no longer seek someone to fill the empty spaces within you. Instead, you seek someone who adds to the fullness you have already cultivated. And that kind of love, when it arrives, is unbreakable. It is a love that does not depend on fear, attachment, or the need for approval. It is a love that stands strong because it is built on a foundation of self-awareness and inner completeness. When you truly understand your worth, when you stop begging for love and start prioritizing yourself, you come to a profound realization. You have never truly lost anyone who was meant for you. You have only let go of those who were never ready to love you as you deserved. You begin to see that love is not a power struggle. It is not a game where the one who cares less wins. It is not a relentless sacrifice of your dignity just to hold on to someone who fails to see your true brilliance. The key to an unbreakable bond does not lie in manipulation, in strategy, or in pretending to be someone you are not in order to please another. It lies in authenticity, in daring to be exactly who you are, without fear of others walking away. Because the ones who leave when you reveal your true self were never there for the real you. They were drawn to the version of you that was willing to please them, to seek their approval, to tolerate what should never have been tolerated. And that is not love, that is convenience. Jung taught us that life is a reflection of our unconscious mind. If you keep repeating the same painful patterns in love, if you continue to attract relationships where you feel you must struggle to be seen, it is because there is something within you that remains unhealed. And until you confront it, until you choose to break free from those cycles, you will keep encountering the same challenges over and over again. But when you do the inner work, when you dare to release everything that is not aligned with your true self, the love that comes after is unlike anything you have ever experienced before, because it no longer comes from a place of emptiness or need. It comes from a place of wholeness, from a place of deep self-acceptance, and love that is born from fullness is the only love that can truly last. If you've made it this far, I want to invite you to reflect deeply for a moment. How many times have you felt that you had to try too hard, almost to the point of exhaustion, just to be loved by someone? How many times have you justified behaviors that hurt you simply because you were afraid of losing someone? How many times have you settled for less than what you truly deserve, convincing yourself that a little bit of love is better than nothing at all? If these words resonate with you, if at this very moment you feel a stirring inside you, an urge to rethink how you experience love, then this is your moment. This is the moment to shift your perspective, to break free from patterns that no longer serve you. It's time to choose yourself. It's time to stop chasing after those who don't want to stay. It's time to step into your power and realize that real love, the kind that is genuine, fulfilling, and reciprocal, never needs to be begged for. True love flows effortlessly when you are aligned with yourself, when you embrace your worth fully and unapologetically. I want to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments. What part of this message struck a chord within you? Have you ever experienced a moment of awakening, a moment when you finally recognized your true value? And if this message speaks to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear these words, someone who may still be struggling, someone who might not yet realize that love should never require humiliation or self-sacrifice. Subscribe and turn on notifications so that this message can reach more people. Because the more people understand their worth, the more people stop settling for crumbs, and the more we will begin to build relationships based on respect, authenticity, and genuine connection. Remember, everything starts with you. The way you treat yourself, the way you value yourself, the way you decide who has access to your life and who doesn't. These choices define the kind of love you will experience. So don't be afraid to let go of what doesn't serve you. Don't be afraid to choose yourself. Because when you do, you don't just transform your own life, you become an example for others. And the world needs more people who love themselves enough to never have to beg for love. Have you ever felt that strange, almost magical sensation in your stomach? The one that seems to flutter every time someone you're deeply interested in gets close. It's that unmistakable mix of nervousness and excitement, a physical reaction that feels impossible to ignore. Chances are you've experienced it, and more than likely, you've also found yourself wondering, even if only for a fleeting moment, whether that person feels the same way about you. Today, I invite you to open your mind, to go beyond the surface and embark with me on a profound inner journey. Together, we'll dive deep into the mysteries of the unconscious, guided by the revolutionary insights of the Swiss psychologist Carl Gustav Jung. Through his ideas, we'll explore a hidden world of subtle yet powerful signals that may be silently telling you something extraordinary, that the person who's been on your mind might, in fact, feel something much stronger for you than you ever imagined. According to Carl Jung, much of human communication doesn't occur through words. Instead, it unfolds quietly in the realm of the unconscious. It's in the movements, the gestures, the lingering glances, and in those fleeting behaviors that often escape the awareness of our conscious minds. Yet, paradoxically, they carry the most truthful expressions of what a person is really feeling. When someone harbors genuine feelings for you, their unconscious often betrays their deepest emotions before their words ever do. So, what should you be looking for? There are certain unmistakable signs, subtle yet potent, that can confirm, almost without a doubt, that someone feels a deep connection with you. These signs may seem small on the surface, but their implications are profound, and once you begin to notice them, they can completely transform the way you perceive your relationship with that person. Let's begin with one of the most revealing and mysterious signs: the way they look at you. Jung believed that the eyes are not just windows to the soul, they're portals to the unconscious. The gaze, he said, is an uncontrollable mirror of our inner world, one that often reveals what words attempt to conceal. So ask yourself, how does this person look at you? Pay very close attention. Do they maintain eye contact with you longer than what would normally be expected? That lingering gaze, that subtle refusal to look away, is not random. When someone feels a deep, authentic attraction, their eyes instinctively try to connect with yours, as if searching for something hidden within them. It's as though they're scanning your soul for clues, longing to understand you more fully, more intimately. And there's more. Watch carefully for a specific physiological response, one that the person themselves might not even be aware of. Observe the pupils. When someone is in the presence of something, or someone they find deeply attractive, their pupils dilate. This expansion is not something they can fake. It is a spontaneous, biological reaction, one governed entirely by the unconscious mind. It happens when we're moved by desire, fascination, or a strong emotional pull. That simple, involuntary dilation of the pupils is one of the most genuine, revealing indicators of attraction. It's a silent declaration of interest, unspoken and uncontrollable. The person may not say a word about how they feel, but their eyes might already be telling you everything. The second sign is even more subtle, yet incredibly powerful. Carl Jung believed that our unconscious mind is constantly striving to be near that which attracts us or reflects some deep part of our identity. It's not a conscious decision. It's more like an invisible force pulling us closer to what resonates with our inner world. This attraction goes beyond mere physical or superficial interest. It's a reflection of something much deeper, the alignment between two psyches, a mirror of something familiar yet longed for. Now ask yourself, does that person consistently find reasons, no matter how trivial, to be around you? Do they keep showing up in places where you often go, as if by coincidence? Do they ask questions that seem almost unnecessary, just for the sake of initiating interaction? Maybe they brush against your arm while talking, or gently touch your shoulder as if it's part of the conversation. These seemingly insignificant actions are anything but random. Jung explained that such behaviors are outward expressions of unconscious desire. The human psyche, according to him, has a language of its own, a silent way of communicating through actions, proximity, and energy. When someone is genuinely interested in you, their unconscious seeks not only closeness, but a fusion of emotional worlds. That subtle physical contact, that almost imperceptible touch, is a symbolic gesture, an attempt to reduce the emotional distance between you both. These actions are signals, whispers of the unconscious trying to establish a connection that words alone cannot express. They are not deliberate in the conventional sense, but they are intentional in the deeper psychological realm. A truly interested person, one who feels drawn to you on an emotional and psychological level, won't always declare it with grand gestures or confessions. Instead, their inner self will push them to move closer, to create shared moments, to break the invisible barriers that separate strangers from soulmates. This is why you might feel that their presence is never far from yours. It's not just coincidence, it's resonance. When someone's unconscious is attuned to yours, they will gravitate toward you, whether they fully realize it or not. These small behaviors, the gentle touches, the chance meetings, the seemingly unnecessary questions, are all part of the same silent language. They are evidence of a desire for intimacy that runs deeper than surface attraction. In Jungian terms, this is not merely about liking someone. It's about the self recognizing the other as meaningful, as familiar, as essential. The unconscious mind is searching for emotional connection, for the possibility of merging with another in a way that transcends words. So, the next time someone finds reasons to be close to you, physically or emotionally, don't dismiss it. It might just be their soul trying to speak to yours. The third sign lies in how someone responds to your emotions. When a person truly feels something deep for you, even the slightest shift in your mood won't go unnoticed. They become finely attuned to your emotional state, sometimes even before you've said a single word. It's as if they can sense your inner world without needing any explanation. This sensitivity is not coincidental. It's a profound reflection of how deeply they are connected to you, emotionally and psychologically. Carl Jung once explained that at the unconscious level, people naturally develop a heightened sense of empathy toward those they genuinely care about. This means that someone who harbors real feelings for you won't just react to your emotions, they will feel them with you. They'll intuitively recognize when you're happy, when you're hurting, or when something just doesn't feel right. And more importantly, they won't ignore it. They won't brush it off as if it doesn't matter. Instead, they'll respond with a sincere desire to understand what's going on inside you. Now take a moment to reflect. Think about those instances when your day has been heavy, when life has thrown something difficult your way, and you felt overwhelmed or emotionally drained. What did that person do? Did they try to distract you with light-hearted conversation? Did they offer a shoulder to lean on, or simply sit with you in silence, letting you know you weren't alone? Maybe they offered comforting words, a small gesture of kindness, or even just listened without judgment. These actions, though subtle, reveal something deeply meaningful. When someone makes a real effort to lift your spirits or provide genuine comfort, not because they feel obligated, but because your pain matters to them, that's a powerful signal. It shows that their interest in you goes far beyond surface-level attraction or fleeting curiosity. They are emotionally invested. They are connected to you in a way that transcends words or appearances. This kind of presence, this kind of care, is not easy to find, and when it's real, it resonates on a much deeper level. one that touches the core of who you are. So pay attention to those moments when someone chooses to show up for you emotionally, especially when you're not at your best. Their empathy, their concern, and their desire to see you feel whole again. Those are the signs that their feelings for you are not just genuine, but profoundly rooted in something real. The fourth sign is deeply tied to the idea of synchronicity. Renowned Swiss psychologist Carl Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity to describe a phenomenon where two seemingly unrelated events appear to be meaningfully connected, not by cause and effect, but by their profound symbolic or emotional resonance. It's as if life itself is orchestrating certain moments to align perfectly, creating a sense that something greater is at play, something beyond logic, something that touches the soul. Now, take a moment to reflect on your encounters with this particular person. Think carefully about how often your paths cross, in the most unexpected yet meaningful ways. Have you noticed that the two of you seem to share remarkably similar tastes, interests, or even thoughts? Sometimes it feels almost uncanny, as though you're looking into a mirror. You might find yourselves completing each other's sentences, thinking the same things at the same time, or expressing feelings in ways that seem to come from a shared emotional source. These are not just random coincidences. They are signals of something deeper unfolding beneath the surface. When that person frequently remarks things like, "What a coincidence," or seems genuinely surprised by how much the two of you have in common, it's a reflection of an unconscious recognition. It's as if both of your inner worlds are resonating at the same frequency. What you are truly experiencing is not just compatibility. It's an invisible thread pulling you both toward each other, weaving your lives together in a way that feels destined. This profound connection is not born from surface-level attraction or intellectual understanding alone. It emerges from the unconscious, that vast, hidden part of our minds that Carl Jung spent his life exploring. The unconscious has a mysterious way of guiding us toward people who awaken something deep within us, who mirror aspects of ourselves that we may not even be fully aware of. And when two unconscious minds recognize each other, even if the individuals themselves cannot fully explain why, the bond that forms is intense, almost magnetic. These invisible threads spun by the unconscious are not accidental. They serve a purpose. They bring souls together who are meant to help each other grow, heal, and evolve. The universe seems to conspire in their favor, arranging events, timing, and circumstances that defy rational explanation. It's as if life is saying, "Pay attention, this matters." So if you feel this kind of synchrony with someone, if your interactions are filled with strange alignments, shared dreams, or parallel life experiences, take it seriously. Such encounters are rare and significant. They often signify that the two of you are not just passing ships in the night, but rather travelers meant to journey together for a time, perhaps even for a lifetime. These are the moments when you realize that destiny may not be a myth after all, but a quiet force moving just beneath the surface, waiting for you to notice. The fifth sign is all about body language. According to Carl Jung, our bodies communicate what the unconscious wants to express, even when we try to conceal it with our conscious minds. The body becomes a messenger of hidden truths, often revealing more than words ever could. Pay close attention to how this person behaves physically when they're with you. Do they adopt open postures? Are their arms and legs uncrossed? Is their torso facing you directly, maybe even leaning slightly in your direction? These subtle gestures are not random. They're indicators that, on an unconscious level, this person is open to you, emotionally available, and perhaps even drawn to your presence. But it doesn't stop there. Have you ever noticed if this person unconsciously mirrors your movements or gestures? This phenomenon is known as unconscious mirroring or mimicry, and it's a powerful, non-verbal sign of empathy and deep connection. It's not something done deliberately. Rather, the body naturally seeks to align itself with the other person when a true emotional bond begins to form. When someone is genuinely interested in you, their physical behavior synchronizes with yours in a silent yet deeply meaningful way. It's as if both of you are engaged in an invisible dance, creating harmony that doesn't need to be spoken to be felt. Up to this point, we've uncovered several clear signals that can reveal far more than you might have imagined. These cues, though subtle, can communicate volumes about someone's emotional openness and internal world. But there's more. Jung identified additional signs, equally powerful, that may surprise you even more. These next insights could radically change the way you understand human relationships, and more importantly, how you interpret the signals you're receiving from that special person who may mean more to you than you realize. And this is where a deeper, more mysterious dimension begins to emerge, the realm of the collective unconscious that Jung so often explored in his work. There exists a type of connection that becomes evident not through words, but through the way someone listens. When a person is truly present with you, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, something remarkable begins to unfold. Their silence isn't empty. It's charged with presence. They're not simply waiting for their turn to speak. Instead, they're absorbing every word you say, fully immersed in your experience, as if your thoughts have become their priority in that moment. This kind of listening, what we call active listening, doesn't require exaggerated gestures or dramatic reactions. It flows effortlessly, born from a place of genuine curiosity and emotional openness. It's a form of internal surrender that reflects not obligation, but a true desire to know who you are beyond your surface. According to Jung, when someone takes on the role of an archetypal figure in our lives, like the anima or the animus, which represent the feminine and masculine energies within the psyche, something profound happens. The soul begins to recognize something in the other. It's a kind of internal acknowledgement that transcends logic, almost like meeting a piece of yourself in another form. You may start to feel that this person is strangely familiar, as if you've known them long before you actually met. There's an inexplicable comfort in their presence, a sense of home that defies explanation. And when you're with them, time behaves differently. Minutes feel like moments, or sometimes like eternities. Even after they leave, their energy seems to linger around you, like an echo that refuses to fade. You find yourself thinking about them, feeling their presence, sensing a pull that's not entirely rational. Don't ignore that feeling. It's not just romantic fantasy. It's your unconscious responding with intensity, recognizing something that goes far beyond the ordinary. This isn't coincidence, it's resonance. The unconscious, deep and wise, speaks in symbols, feelings, and energy. When it meets something or someone that vibrates at a similar frequency, it responds powerfully. This is not just emotional attraction, it's psychological recognition. Jung believed that such encounters are meant to awaken parts of us that have been dormant, to help us grow, to heal, and to evolve. These people come into our lives not by accident, but by a kind of psychological necessity. They mirror parts of ourselves we may not fully understand yet, inviting us to a deeper self-awareness. So if you find yourself drawn to someone in a way that feels different, almost mystical, take a step back and observe. Listen to your body, notice your thoughts, and feel into the energy that surrounds your interactions. The body never lies. The unconscious is always speaking, even when we think we're in control. And sometimes, when we're lucky enough, we meet someone who helps us hear that inner voice more clearly than ever before. Another powerful sign arises during moments of vulnerability. Pay attention to whether this person feels comfortable sharing their doubts, fears, or past wounds with you. Jung taught that the soul only opens up to what it perceives as safe, as something that feels like an extension of itself. If someone begins to reveal who they truly are with you, without masks, even confessing things they've never told anyone else, you're witnessing a very clear manifestation of deep trust and genuine emotional interest. And let's not forget something essential: how that person reacts when you share your achievements, your ideas, or your dreams. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of realizing one's true self. If this person supports you, pushes you to grow, and celebrates your progress as if it were their own, that's not just kindness. It's a form of emotional connection that emerges from the unconscious, where who you are at your core holds sacred value for the other. But there's also a sign that, although it may seem contradictory, is actually one of the most revealing: discomfort. Sometimes someone who feels something very deep for you doesn't know how to handle it and may act with a kind of emotional clumsiness. They might appear nervous, avoid eye contact at key moments, or even seem distracted. Jung explained that what is repressed in the unconscious often shows itself in ambivalent ways. So, if you notice contradictions in how they behave, if one day they seem very close and the next more distant, it may not be disinterest. It could be an inner struggle playing out inside them. The unconscious energy is powerful. Often, without realizing it, our dreams begin to be filled with that person's presence. Jung analyzed dreams as open windows into the soul, and when someone appears repeatedly in our dreams, it's a sign that this person holds a deep psychic role in our inner world. Maybe you haven't fully noticed it yet, but if you're dreaming about this person and those dream encounters feel intense, emotional, or meaningful, the unconscious is telling you something your mind hasn't yet fully processed. And beyond the psychological, Jung linked this with the spiritual. When one soul is touched by another, the body reacts too. Subtle changes in your heartbeat, that sense of feeling more alive when that person is near, or an odd serenity when you simply hear their voice. These are psychosomatic manifestations that reveal a profound emotional resonance. It's not fantasy, and it's not self-suggestion. It's a symphony between your unconscious and theirs, playing notes that words often can't explain. True interest isn't always expressed through clear declarations or classic romantic gestures. Sometimes it hides in what seems insignificant: a long pause before saying goodbye, a random question about your most personal likes, or a smile that appears for no reason when they see you. Each of these gestures may be orchestrated by the deepest layers of the unconscious, where the most authentic and lasting connections are forged. And there are still more signs that Carl Jung helped to decipher. Signs that most people overlook because they sit right on the edge of the invisible. Let's go even deeper into that hidden universe, because what comes next could open your eyes in a way you never imagined. There are moments when the mind runs out of words, but the body keeps on speaking. Jung believed the unconscious expresses itself through symbolism, and that includes subtle physical reactions. Pay attention if that person touches their neck, adjusts their clothes, runs a hand through their hair, or fidgets with an object while with you, without realizing it. These gestures aren't random. They reveal an internal tension between what they feel and what they cannot say. These movements come from the urge to control emotions that are becoming too intense to contain. Even awkward or clumsy speech can be a clue. Notice if the person says things out of place, contradicts themselves, or laughs unexpectedly. This isn't just regular insecurity, it's a defensive reaction from the unconscious, trying to protect what they feel without revealing it entirely. Jung taught that when the conscious and unconscious collide, the truest emotions are born. If you notice that conflict in how they speak to you, it might mean what they feel is stronger than they're able to process. There's something else often overlooked: the need to remember. If this person recalls tiny details you've already forgotten, things you said in passing, your favorite food, a place you only mentioned once, don't take it lightly. Remembering is an act of the soul when there's affection. When someone truly likes us, their unconscious attention sharpens and they begin to record what comes from us as if it were precious. That selective memory reveals more than words could ever say. And then there's a sign you can't see, but you can feel: anticipation. You'll notice they somehow respond before you even speak. They offer you a jacket before you feel cold. They ask if you've eaten before you say you're hungry. They message you at the exact moment you were thinking about them. It's not telepathy, it's unconscious connection. Jung spoke of subtle energetic fields, of how our emotions can extend beyond the body and reach others without physical contact. If someone anticipates your needs, it means they're perceiving you beyond the surface. Sometimes, what the unconscious can't hide shows itself through the music that person listens to, the books they start reading, or the quotes they share. Without realizing, they're beginning to resonate with your interests, your ideas, your symbols. This isn't coincidence. Jung described this as psychic transference, a process where two inner worlds start influencing each other. If you notice that your preferences start to show up in them without you ever mentioning it, it means a deep-level fusion is taking place. And pay very close attention to how this person behaves when someone else shows interest in you. They might not say it out loud, but their body responds. Their voice changes, they look away, or they fall silent. And that silence speaks. Jung would say, this is where the shadow appears, the part of ourselves we don't control, but which reveals what we truly feel. If you notice restrained jealousy, if you sense a quiet discomfort or a subtle need to claim space without aggression, what you're witnessing is the unconscious revealing its desire for exclusive connection. Another subtle but powerful sign emerges when that person can share silence with you without feeling awkward. It's not about filling the air with words, but about simply being, just being. Jung believed the soul finds rest in the presence of someone with whom it doesn't need to explain itself. If you both can exist in silence without forcing it, if a peaceful stillness surrounds you even when no words are spoken, that presence is speaking louder than any conversation ever could. And if amidst all of this, they have shown you any of their wounds, their mistakes, their broken parts, listen closely. That is not something shown to just anyone. Jung said, humans only reveal their shadow to someone they perceive as a symbol of transformation. If someone opens up to you like that, It's because deep down, they feel you're a safe space for their most vulnerable truth. Don't take it lightly. There's more. So much more. The unconscious is an ocean of symbols, of hidden gestures, of invisible pulses. What comes next goes even deeper. Because when someone longs for you with their soul, their truest language isn't spoken. It's revealed in every act they can't control. Sometimes, a connection is most clearly felt in unexpected moments, like when you're absent. Jung explained that the unconscious gains clarity when something slips from view, when a person feels your absence more intensely than they can express. Their behavior shifts. Maybe they grow restless, more thoughtful, more distant from others, and the moment you reappear, their brightness returns, their lightness revives, as if your presence brought back a part of themselves that had been missing. That emotional shift isn't just nostalgia. It's the unconscious recognizing an invisible but deeply real bond. Sometimes, without realizing it, this person becomes your emotional echo. They don't just remember what you said. They begin to use your phrases, your words, even your tone of voice. This subtle mirroring is one of the strongest signs of unconscious resonance. Jung described it as a symbolic identification process, where someone starts to incorporate parts of you into their own story without knowing it. It's a way of keeping you close, of feeling near, even when you're not physically there. And there's a deeper expression still, the creative impulse. When someone is emotionally stirred by your energy, they often begin to create. They might start writing, painting, composing music, or just becoming more expressive for no clear reason. Jung saw creativity as a release valve of the unconscious, a way to channel what can't be logically explained. If you've noticed this person becoming more artistic since you entered their life, it means you're awakening inner areas that had long been dormant. There are also the moments of pause, not from indifference, but from silent observation. Some people, when feeling something profound, pull back a little, not because they don't want closeness, but because they're trying to understand what's happening within them. Jung said that when the unconscious encounters a figure that represents something archetypal or transformative, it doesn't respond with immediate euphoria. Instead, it responds with a kind of inward stillness. So, if this person sometimes gazes at you in silence, as if trying to decipher you, it's because their soul is working to give shape to what it feels. And when that connection is real, even physical spaces begin to shift. Jung spoke about how symbols also manifest in the environment. If that person starts inviting you to meaningful places, if they want to share personal spaces with you, their home, favorite spots, their most intimate corners, it's not just a social gesture. It's an unconscious way of opening their world to you, of emotional integration. Whoever shares their spaces also shares their story. There's another sign many don't recognize: the emotional tension before seeing you. If you know that person gets nervous, prepares carefully, or even avoids meeting for a while without a clear reason, don't take it as disinterest. Jung said the soul trembles before what it truly desires. Often unconscious love first shows as fear, as an urge to flee before surrendering to vulnerability. If someone seems to be wrestling with an internal battle before meeting you, it's because you represent something bigger than they've faced before. And when you finally meet, watch the body language at goodbye. A simple farewell is not the same as one where the body resists leaving. A step that remains halfway taken, a lingering last glance, an extra word that wasn't necessary but extends the moment. All of these are expressions of a soul unwilling to let go. Jung said the soul seeks permanence where it feels at home. And if the body doesn't want to leave, it's because the unconscious has found refuge in your presence. And we haven't even touched the most mysterious form. Coincidences that seem too precise appear exactly when you think about that person, and suddenly they write to you, or you dream about them, and the next day you see them. Or when something they said repeats somewhere else, as if the whole universe conspires to keep you connected. Jung called these synchronicities, and far from mere chance, they're signs of a hidden order, an invisible web between two souls more connected than they realize. And this isn't over, because when the unconscious begins revealing its truth, it does so little by little, in fragments, in symbols, in barely perceptible signs. But if you know how to look, if you listen with your soul, you'll discover there's much more beneath the surface of a simple attraction. What comes next might be exactly what you needed to understand, what their heart has been silently screaming. Sometimes the clearest message isn't in what's said, but in what's held back, in what's left unsaid, in that glance that drops when it meets yours, in that message almost written but erased, in that confession hovering on the lips but never spoken. Jung said, the unconscious doesn't always express itself clearly because its language is symbolic, tangled, but deeply honest. So if you've noticed all these signs, if you feel there's something beyond mere liking, you're not imagining things, you're perceiving a silent message emerging from the soul. And maybe until now, that person hasn't told you, hasn't found the words, or hasn't allowed themselves to accept it. But you feel it because something vibrates differently when they're with you, because their energy shifts, because time bends, because their silences speak louder than any conversation, because you don't need them to say it. You already know. And if while listening to this, someone kept appearing in your mind over and over, it's probably for a reason. The invisible is more real than you think. Now I want you to join this conversation that goes beyond words. If this message touched something inside you, if you saw yourself reflected, or if you know someone going through this, share this video. Maybe you'll give answers to someone who still doesn't know how to name what they feel. Leave your experience in the comments. I want to read you. Tell me if you've lived any of these signs, or if your intuition has revealed something the other hasn't said yet. Your story might be exactly what another person needs to awaken. And if you want to keep exploring the secret language of the soul, the hidden truths of the unconscious, and everything Carl Jung left us as a legacy, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We're building a community of awakened souls, people who don't settle for the superficial and seek to understand what hides in gestures, dreams, and life-changing signs. Because what you feel isn't coincidence, it's a call. You're not here by coincidence. Something deep within you led you to this video at this very moment, and by the time it ends, you'll understand why. The awakening of the inner archetype is not something that can be forced or rushed. It's a silent and profound process, an invitation from the soul to remember its true essence, to reconnect with that primordial energy that has always been present within you, lying dormant until now. Even if it manifests in subtle ways, there are unmistakable signs that this awakening has already begun. One of the first is the sense that an internal force has started to guide you, even if you can't describe it with words. It's not just an ordinary intuition. It's a powerful feeling, as if something ancient and wise inside you has taken the reins of your life, influencing your choices with a strength that feels both familiar and mysterious. You no longer make decisions solely based on logic or the expectations of others. Instead, you're moved by a deeper calling that pulls you toward becoming more authentically yourself. This inner force doesn't require external justification. It expresses itself as a quiet certainty, as a compass that points the way even in the midst of confusion. Your life begins to align with patterns you hadn't noticed before. Symbols, synchronicities, encounters. They start appearing, resonating in a way that goes beyond reason or intellect. And though you may not fully understand why you're drawn to certain paths or people, something inside you knows it's not a coincidence. It's your inner archetype surfacing, claiming its rightful space in your daily existence. This inner energy begins to shape not just your thoughts, but also your language, the way you walk, the way you observe the world, the way you now make choices you would have previously avoided. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you have always been at your core. And this remembering doesn't come as a mental image. It's a visceral certainty, one that anchors itself in your body, in your voice, in the way you remain present without the need to conform. You begin to sense that something inside you is falling into place, as if all the scattered pieces are finally aligning, even if you can't yet explain why. You're no longer acting out of a desire to please or to fulfill inherited expectations. Now, your gestures, your decisions, even your silences respond to a force that doesn't come from the outside, but from the deepest part of your soul. You also start noticing that this force becomes especially active in moments of tension, of crisis, of transformation. And instead of dragging you down, it holds you up. It reminds you of what you've always carried within, what you came here to embody, and what you can no longer ignore. Your energy begins to gain direction, even if the destination isn't entirely clear. But that doesn't scare you. For the first time, you feel like you're walking toward yourself. And as you continue along this path, that internal energy becomes increasingly recognizable. Not because the world around you changes, but because you begin to see it more clearly in your everyday life, in the way you stand tall when faced with tough decisions, in how you say no without guilt, in how you hold on to your truth without needing to explain it. You're no longer seeking validation in anyone else's eyes, because that validation has started to grow from within, not as inflated ego, but as deep, unwavering integrity. You realize there's a part of you that was never meant to be learned, only remembered. And that memory doesn't come from the mind, it comes from the soul. You begin to surround yourself with people, places, and things that nourish that energy in you. It's as if your external world is rearranging itself so you can finally become who you were meant to be. You lose interest in meaningless conversations and roles that never truly fit you. Your energy no longer wants to just survive. It wants to express itself, to expand, to live fully. And this is the moment when your inner archetype not only awakens, it begins to integrate into your life. It's no longer just an abstract concept. It becomes a living force, one that urges you to speak more honestly, to move with more intention, and to live with more coherence. And that impulse can no longer be silenced. Because once your inner archetype awakens, everything that doesn't align with it begins to dissolve. Another sign of this awakening is a shift in your attention. You start to notice symbols, images, and messages that you used to overlook. This is not random. The language of the archetype isn't literal. It's symbolic, intuitive, profound. You begin to see certain numbers, words, shapes, or recurring dreams. They don't appear as superstition, but as real manifestations of what's moving within you. Your unconscious mind, which once operated quietly in the background, begins to communicate with you through signs that only you can truly interpret. You may find yourself suddenly drawn to certain animals, to ancient myths, or to archetypal figures like the wise elder, the healer, the guide, the warrior, or the inner lover. And it's not about outward admiration or wanting to become something you're not. It's something far deeper. It's an inner recognition, an echo from within that tells you this isn't new. It's not something you have to chase or become. It's something you already are. And now you're remembering it. A memory awakening, not from your mind, but from your soul. Symbols begin to appear in your dreams, strange yet familiar images that seem to carry a message. Unexpected visions emerge during meditation, or simple, seemingly random moments throughout the day align perfectly to show you something vital. And even if no one else sees it, you feel it deep in your bones. It's real, not necessarily in the visible world, but in the energetic one, in the emotional layers that transform you from the inside out. These symbols don't ask for logic. They ask for presence, for trust, for the kind of knowing that doesn't need to be proven, because it already is. You start to realize that your life isn't just a chain of random events. It's a vast and intricate web of deep meanings, a sacred language that you're only now beginning to decode. And with every moment of insight, that hidden script doesn't tell you who you should become. It reveals who you've always been, at the core of your sacred essence. It's like learning to read a map you didn't know you were carrying, and once you begin, everything changes. The ordinary starts to speak in extraordinary ways. Your daily life, once filled with routine and automatic behaviors, becomes infused with meaning. You no longer crave grand answers, because every small sign, every subtle shift, brings a forgotten part of you back to life, a long-lost emotion, a hidden strength, a truth that had waited in silence for years just to be named. This symbolic connection doesn't just make you more aware, it makes you more open. Your intuition sharpens, your inner compass begins to point more clearly. You no longer just feel, you understand, on a much deeper level, the things you once overlooked. You begin to see that certain emotions, cycles, and people didn't enter your life by accident. Each one is a mirror, reflecting some part of you that longs to be seen, acknowledged, and understood. And with that realization, your outer reality becomes a reflection of your inner evolution. Not because the world has changed, but because your way of seeing it has. You're now perceiving it from a different place, a sacred place, where everything communicates, where even the most subtle detail becomes a signpost guiding you toward a more complete version of yourself. From this heightened awareness, discomfort no longer feels like something to escape. Instead, you see it for what it truly is, a message in disguise, a fragment of your archetype waiting to be embodied. And that willingness to look with different eyes, to feel instead of flee, is the clearest sign that a deep wisdom is awakening within you. Not the kind learned through books or teachings, but a wisdom born of the soul, nurtured by experience. This kind of wisdom doesn't arrive as a lightning bolt of sudden clarity. It rises slowly, quietly, expanding your awareness and transforming the way you experience everything. What once felt like conflict now becomes an invitation. to explore the parts of yourself that react, to question the origins of your fears, to sit with emotions you used to run from. Because now you understand. Each emotion holds a key that opens a door to something greater, something that has always lived within you. And gradually, you become more intimate with yourself, not through ideas or philosophies, but through the daily practice of presence, of sitting with yourself in silence, not to escape, but to listen, to truly hear what's moving in your deepest layers. Your internal dialogue begins to shift. You no longer speak to yourself with doubt or blame. You speak with care, like someone who knows they're on a sacred journey, someone who doesn't need to have it all figured out, but can no longer afford to keep ignoring their truth. You start to see that the symbols don't just come in dreams or signs from the universe. They appear in your reactions, your repeated words, the patterns you project onto others. What you criticize, what you admire, what you fear or avoid, all of it reveals your inner world more than the external one. And instead of feeling overwhelmed by this realization, you feel empowered, because now you know you have the tools to transform what once felt fixed and immovable. Even your life cycles become clearer. You begin to notice how certain patterns repeat, not as punishment, but as opportunities to integrate unresolved parts of yourself. You become aware of the exact moment when the old version of you wants to take control again. But this time, something's different. You don't react automatically. This time, you pause, you breathe, you choose differently. You choose from a deeper place, a place where your archetype is not a concept, but a living force within you. It structures your choices, sustains your path, and gives shape to your inner world. And with this connection, your experience of life becomes richer. You're no longer trapped at the surface. You dive into the depths, navigating the hidden language of the essential. And you do it with the calm clarity of someone who no longer needs to escape, because you've begun to recognize yourself in the very things you once avoided. The third sign appears when something deep within you begins to shift, when your identity starts to shed the layers of roles, personas, and masks that no longer align with your true essence. This transformation isn't superficial, and it certainly isn't a fleeting act of rebellion. It's not about changing your style or updating your appearance. It's a profound internal purification, a deep and sometimes unsettling process where you begin to see, perhaps for the first time, that much of what you believed yourself to be wasn't really you. It becomes painfully clear that many aspects of your personality were merely adaptations, constructs designed to make you feel safe, accepted, validated. You had unconsciously created characters, molded versions of yourself, just to fit in, to avoid rejection, to gain approval, or simply to survive in a world that demands conformity. But something inside you stirs. Something ancient and wise begins to wake up. When your inner archetype starts to awaken, these roles, however useful they once were, can no longer sustain themselves. Not because they are inherently wrong or bad, but because they've become too limited, too small to hold the immense energy that is now beginning to surge through your being. Suddenly, pretending becomes unbearable. You can no longer feign interest in things that don't resonate with your soul. The illusion starts to dissolve. Relationships that once felt comfortable or even necessary begin to feel hollow. You realize that you can't keep walking paths your spirit never chose, even if you once fought hard to be on them. What once looked like success now feels empty, void of meaning. And what you once avoided out of fear, uncertainty, or conditioning, now draws you in with a quiet but undeniable force. This detachment isn't always graceful. In fact, it can feel like mourning. Letting go of masks and identities that you wore for years can feel like losing pieces of yourself. But in truth, you're not losing anything essential. You're returning. You're being stripped down to your core, to the raw and unchangeable part of you that cannot be bargained with or diluted. It's not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. You're allowing everything that distracted you from your inner truth to fall away. And as it does, a more real, more coherent version of yourself begins to emerge. You start to see yourself differently, not through the lens of what you do or achieve, but through the energy you carry, through the silent truth you radiate in your presence, your gestures, your choices. Even if others don't understand this change, you feel it clearly. It's a clarity that doesn't come from intellectual analysis. It comes from having listened to yourself for so long that ignoring your truth is no longer an option. You feel it in your bones. You feel it in your breath. You've come to know yourself too intimately to keep pretending. Letting go of these old roles gives you a kind of freedom you didn't even know was possible. It's not the freedom to do whatever you want without consequence. It's the freedom of walking without the heavy burden of pleasing an outdated image of yourself. You no longer need to live up to expectations that never really fit you in the first place. You discover you can be firm without being harsh, vulnerable without feeling exposed, authentic without fearing loss, because your sense of belonging no longer depends on others' approval, but on your inner alignment. Your energy stops scattering between what you feel and what you do. You start moving from a place of deep stillness, yet incredible power. The need to control, to manipulate outcomes, to force understanding. All of it begins to fade. You're no longer acting to be accepted. You're simply being. And this being doesn't require explanation. It is so grounded in truth that anything which doesn't align with it naturally falls away. Even your relationship with discomfort transforms. In the past, discomfort was something to run from. It threatened the masks you wore. But now, you lean into it. You welcome it, because you understand that discomfort is a sacred messenger. It reveals where you're still holding back, where you're still attached to outdated versions of yourself. And in that awareness, you allow yourself to grieve, not with attachment, but with reverence. You honor who you once were without clinging to it, because now there is space, real space, for a fuller, deeper presence to live through you. Life becomes simpler, yet more meaningful. There's less noise, but more depth. You no longer feel the need to decorate your achievements or hide your healing. You feel at home in your process, at peace with your pace, aligned with your path. You understand now that the true power of the archetype awakening within you does not lie in what you achieve. It lies in what you embody. And you have begun to embody your truth. And once you do that, the need to look outside yourself for validation disappears. You're no longer searching for figures to imitate. You're seeking resonance. You're drawn to depth. You're guided by connections that are rooted in authenticity, not obligation. Living from this deeper identity makes you more selective about what you consume, what you share, what you allow into your energetic field. You stop explaining yourself to those who aren't willing to understand. You stop trying to be seen by people who only recognize the surface, because your worth no longer hinges on being understood by everyone. It's now grounded in being honest with yourself. And this changes the way you relate to others. not from a place of need, but from presence, not from a mask, but from the frequency you emit simply by being real. That frequency begins to shape a new reality around you. You attract people who vibrate at the same depth. You find yourself in spaces where you can finally breathe without performing. You receive opportunities that don't feel like obligations. They feel like answers. Answers from the universe, responding to your authenticity. And you also realize something profound. You're no longer available for what drains you. Not because you reject it, not because you judge it, but because you love yourself enough to choose clarity. And that clarity brings peace. A peace that can't be bargained for. Because you've earned it. You earned it by releasing everything that distanced you from yourself. Your silence now speaks louder than words. It doesn't need to convince. It only needs to be. And in that being, something sacred is felt. Something ancient. Something that was always there, but buried. It's not an idealized version of yourself. It's your essence, stripped of interference. It's your archetype in motion. It's your soul, finally in coherence. The fourth sign. You begin to experience a profound reconnection with parts of yourself that were never truly gone, just hidden, buried beneath layers of fear, conditioning, and forgetfulness. These are not qualities you're newly acquiring, but pieces of your essence that had been silenced, shamed, or simply overlooked. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you've always been at your core. Suddenly, traits you once saw as flaws, your intensity, your deep sensitivity, your unconventional perspective, begin to rise to the surface again, not as burdens, but as gifts. You start to realize that your strength was never arrogance, it was clarity. Your emotional depth was never weakness, it was empathy. And your unique way of seeing the world, once mistaken for madness, was simply a heightened form of perception, a different kind of wisdom that doesn't conform to the norm, but transcends it. This remembrance doesn't come from your logical mind. It comes from your soul. It emerges from that sacred space within you where your archetype has always resided, dormant, but never absent, waiting patiently to be reawakened. This awakening doesn't construct something new. Rather, it activates what has always been. It stirs your natural talents, your intuitive knowing, your sacred way of being a bridge between the invisible and the visible, the spiritual and the material. You begin to feel more whole, not because everything in your life is suddenly perfect, but because you're no longer at war with yourself. You stop resisting your own essence. The internal battle softens, and in its place, a previously unknown peace begins to bloom. It's a peace that doesn't come from external circumstances, but from finally inhabiting your entire being without fragmenting yourself. The emotions that used to overwhelm you now serve as teachers. The impulses you once suppressed now sharpen into precise intuition. That ache inside you to express, to create, to speak your truth. It no longer stems from fear or anxiety. It becomes a sacred urgency, a deep calling that you can no longer ignore. You begin to feel an undeniable need to create, to communicate, to give form to what your soul feels, because now you understand. This is also part of your purpose. Even if you're still on the journey, you come to a beautiful realization. You don't need to evolve into some better version of yourself. You only need to continue making space for that inner voice, that presence within you that already knows who you are, why you're here, and that finally, at last, has been given permission to bloom. And when this part of you begins to bloom, it doesn't do so with noise or with the need to be seen. It blooms in silence, in quiet determination, the way truth always does. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth, because you see now that your worth has always been there, waiting for you to stop hiding it, waiting for you to stop apologizing for it, waiting for the moment when you'd allow it to speak freely through your every word and action. What you once repressed in order to fit in, you now honor as the very essence of what makes you unique. Your creativity, your emotional intensity, your capacity to sense what others cannot. All the things you tried to silence so you wouldn't be too much now rise in you like sacred flames. They're not accessories. They're not burdens. They're sacred tools, alive and vibrant, meant to guide you back to your archetypal energy. This energy isn't interested in labels. It doesn't obey formulas or expectations. It is wise, ancient, sometimes even contradictory, but always real, always true. And slowly, you begin to live from that place with less fear, with more surrender. A quiet confidence takes root in you, one that no longer depends on being validated by others. You stop defining yourself by how others see you. You begin to define yourself by what you are able to hold within, by your own inner presence, your own unwavering truth. This gives you a deep, grounded stability, not because everything in your life is under control, but because you've learned to trust your own roots. You've learned to lean into that inner fire that never goes out, even when the outside world tries to dim it. You begin to understand that you don't have to be in perfect balance all the time in order to be in alignment. Because living from your archetype doesn't mean being enlightened. It means being awake. And being awake means embracing both your darkness and your light. It means holding space for your chaos as much as your order. Because everything within you has a role. Every part of you, even the ones you once rejected, are now seen for what they truly are, necessary components of your awakening. And as you integrate them, your energy expands, not outward into the world in search of approval, but inward into yourself, into the sacred soil of your being. And from that deep inner space, a new reality begins to take shape. That new reality isn't something you fabricate. It's not built on the expectations of others. It is a natural manifestation of your energy, now unified, no longer torn between roles and masks. You are no longer trapped between what the world wants from you and what your soul longs to express. You now act from a single place, your truth. And when your truth becomes the foundation of your choices, even the smallest decision begins to carry a new weight, a new clarity. You no longer say yes to what steals your peace. You no longer choose from a place of lack or desperation. You've learned the sacred art of waiting, not out of fear, but out of knowing who you are. And once you recognize yourself, you no longer sell yourself short. You no longer rush. You no longer hide. Your way of moving through life becomes more steady, more intentional, more sacred. Because when your inner archetype awakens, everything you touch begins to vibrate differently. Your words carry new power. Your gaze holds more presence. Even your silence speaks louder than any speech. And this shift, though not always noticed by others, can be felt. It's felt in the rooms you enter. It's felt in the people who gravitate toward you. It's felt in the way everything around you seems to move, with more harmony, as if life itself finally recognizes that you've returned to your center, to your essence, to the exact point where everything can grow without distortion. You're no longer playing a role. You're no longer trying to become someone. You're simply remembering who you've always been. And as you remember, your soul breathes more freely, more lightly, more truthfully. And the fifth sign appears when your entire perception of purpose shifts. It no longer feels like something external you need to chase. Instead, it becomes something you embody. In the past, your purpose may have seemed like a distant goal, something to be discovered, searched for, or even achieved through effort and perseverance. You may have believed you needed to follow certain steps, meet specific expectations, or reach an ideal state before you could truly live in alignment with it. But now, something profound has changed within you. From the moment your inner archetype awakens, you begin to realize a powerful truth. Purpose isn't something you do. It's something you are. It's not a career, a destination, or a role to play. It's the natural expression of your most authentic self. And when you allow yourself to simply be, without masks, without filters, without self-denial, what you came here to do begins to manifest effortlessly. Your mere presence begins to carry weight and meaning. Existential questions no longer paralyze you the way they once did. And it's not because you suddenly have all the answers. It's because you've stopped depending on external formulas. You no longer need someone to hand you a roadmap. You've realized that your path is unlike any other, that your unique expression is sacred. Every experience, every wound, every moment, even the ones that once felt senseless or painful, was part of a design your soul had to break free from in order to step fully into the space that belongs to you. Now, the meaning of your life isn't measured by visible results or accomplishments. Instead, it's reflected in what awakens inside you and inside others, simply through your presence. You're no longer obsessed with doing something extraordinary. You're more concerned with living each moment from a place of depth and truth. You've begun to understand that even the simplest act becomes sacred when it flows from authenticity. Something within you no longer allows you to live on autopilot. What you once tolerated without question now feels unbearably heavy. Activities that lack soul, words spoken without intention, routines that feel empty, all of it drains you more than any physical effort. Because once your inner archetype has awakened, it won't let you fall asleep again. It won't let you forget who you truly are or why you're here. Even if the world continues spinning in its usual rhythm, you've stopped running alongside it. You've slowed down. You're no longer trying to keep up. Instead, you're walking in step with your soul, at its pace, in its cadence, and in its truth. And that way of walking, even though it looks different from what others may expect, is the only one that can lead you to a life that truly belongs to you. And when you begin to live a life that truly belongs to you, you feel something change. Everything you do carries a new energy. You're no longer driven by impulse or obligation. You move with intention, from resonance. Every action comes from a quiet, clear space within. A space that no longer holds confusion or noise, only direction. You come to understand that purpose is not some grand event waiting to happen. It's present in every choice you make that reflects your essence. It's in every moment you choose peace over approval. Every time you choose silence over reaction. Every time you refuse to betray yourself, even if it means disappointing others' expectations of you. That inner alignment becomes your new measure of success. You no longer need achievements to feel worthy. You no longer need recognition to feel on the right path. Your compass is now invisible to the eyes of the world, but it's unwaveringly clear to your soul. Things that once seemed small now feel significant. A sincere gesture, a moment of deep presence, an encounter that stirs something within. All of it takes on a sacred weight, one you used to reserve only for the extraordinary. This is one of the clearest signs that your inner archetype is not only awake, it has become fully embodied. You're no longer seeking meaning in distant places. You're planting it here and now, with every step you take in alignment, with every word that comes from your center, with every day you choose not to forget who you are. That steady, quiet, and consistent decision to be true to yourself is the most real manifestation of your purpose. It doesn't require applause or validation. You feel it in your body. You sense it in your breath. In the calm that remains, even when the world outside is chaotic. You realize that life is no longer about finding the path, but about walking it with loyalty to yourself, holding your truth, even when it isn't the most popular or the easiest. And that's where the extraordinary happens, not like a sudden explosion or dramatic change, but like a soft, elegant alignment between your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. Your energy is no longer scattered. Your mind becomes quiet. Your presence becomes deeper and more grounded. You stop pushing life to happen. Things begin to flow, naturally, organically, with the exact rhythm your soul has always needed. Even your relationship with time transforms. You stop chasing. You stop rushing. You begin to receive, allowing things to come when you are ready, not when the world demands them. This shift in frequency pulls you away from burnout. It frees you from the exhausting pressure to prove yourself. It gives you the serenity to simply be, to live, to feel, to create, from a place of truth. This is how purpose stops being a goal and becomes a way of inhabiting the world. And although the path will still bring its challenges, you no longer get lost in them. Because now, you know exactly where everything begins to make sense. Inside of you. If this message resonates with something deep within, it's because that inner archetype has already started to awaken. You don't have to do anything dramatic to be worthy of this. You simply have to allow yourself to be who you truly are, with everything that entails, with everything it liberates. Remember, you're not discovering something new. You're returning to what is essential. And that return is the most powerful spiritual act there is. Don't rush. Don't force. Your truth has no urgency, but it does have direction. And if this message has lit something within you, if it has walked beside you in this moment of your journey, then keep exploring with us. Keep deepening the path of awakening, of soul, of consciousness, of true transformation. Because the truth already lives inside you. It's not lost. It's simply waiting to be lived.